So this idea of harvesting makes so much sense in the natural world. Like if you were to go out, you were to plant an apple tree, you understand what kind of fruit you're going to get out of that. You're going to get apples, you're not going to get oranges, and it's no big surprise to anyone. So Paul's reminding the church it's that same way in our spiritual lives, that whatever we've invested our time, our efforts, our actions, and our energy into, that's what we're going to reap. And Paul reminds them, hey, if it's been into sinful things, like you've been investing into, sexual immorality, to gossip, to slander, to anger, it's going to be destruction that you start to reap back. It's like that sin is a seed that we're putting into the ground of our life, and that we begin to reap those things that sin produces in our life. So if you're prone to anger and you don't have self-control, you may get into a lot of fights. There may be physical harm that happens with that. That's the sinful nature. But Paul says it's not just a negative effect. It also happens as we sow into the spiritual things of God. So if we're sowing into prayer, if we're sowing into reading God's word, it's no surprise that our relationship with God is strengthened because we're investing into things that have a spiritual benefit in our lives. So Paul says, don't be deceived. It's this natural idea of harvesting, that whatever you've invested into your life, you're going to reap. As Christians, sometimes we get a little bit upset maybe because we think, now I'm trying to sow good stuff. I was sowing bad things, but it doesn't seem like things are changing right away. But there's a natural season with harvesting. When you plant something, it takes a while for that to take kind of root and then to grow up, and where you see the actual fruit or the effects of what you've planted. And it's that same thing with things in our lives. Sometimes if we've invested for years or even decades into negative behavior, into sin in our life, we're still reaping that for a while, even after we've confessed Christ and accepted his forgiveness. And it takes a while of investing into the spiritual things before we see that harvest. But if we're diligent to do that, if today we make that decision to invest in prayer, into spiritual disciplines, into God's word, over the next few months and years, we begin to see all of that return and the fruit of what God has done in our life. So Paul's reminding them this: you're going to reap what it is that you've sown.